Hi, my name's David Donovan, and I'm the editor-in-chief of North Carolina Lawyers Weekly. Our annual Leaders in the Law event is always one of my favorite events that we do each year, and this year we're having to do it like never before. So while I am a bit sad that we're not getting a chance to see you all in person for our event this year, I am really excited about the format of this year's event. For the first time ever, we're going to be speaking with each of our honorees and getting their thoughts on what being a leader in the law means to them. And as you can see, we've put the whole event online on YouTube so that you can watch it anytime you want. So we are really excited about this year's event, and I hope you are too. So I'd like to kick things off by bringing in our general manager, Andrea Mounts, to talk about our fantastic sponsors that we have this year. Andrea?
Thank you, David. It goes without saying that we would not be able to put this event on without the generous donations from our sponsors. Joining us this year as our social media sponsor is Roberts and Stevens, PA, for the first time. And of course, we have our title education sponsor, Elon University School of Law. Elon Law's learning by doing approach to legal education continues to capture national attention. Pre-Law magazine ranked Elon Law this past spring as a top 10 school for practical training, and the magazine recently listed Elon Law in its honor roll for employment. Elon Law's legal writing program, likewise, has been ranked by U.S. News and World Report in the top quartile of all American law schools. And based on new figures from the American Bar Association, Elon Law is now in the top quartile of American law schools for lowest average student loan debt at graduation. Elon Law enrolled a record number of students in its incoming class this fall, with improved academic metrics and commitment to helping the profession mirror the communities we serve, with 30% of our 1Ls identifying as students of color. I would now like to turn it over to Dean Luke Bierman of Elon University School of Law to introduce their Leadership in Law Award.
Hi, I'm Luke Bierman. I'm the Dean of the Elon University School of Law, and I'm here today with Judge Albert Diaz of the United States Court of Appeals for the Fourth Circuit. We are very pleased and proud to be able to award Judge Diaz this year, the 10th year that we're doing this in partnership with the North Carolina Lawyers Weekly, our Leadership in the Law Award. And Judge Diaz, thank you for all that you've done. Thank you for agreeing to be a part of this award. As you know, Elon Law is a unique and innovative law school. Our commitment to leadership in the law reflects our importance that we place on service and public service, and certainly the things that you have done in your life represent and embody those attributes and the things that we think are important. Service in the Marines, the first Hispanic state judge in North Carolina, certainly the work that you have done on the Court of Appeals, all representing leadership of the kind that we as lawyers would like to emulate. So thank you for being with us. I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about your thoughts on how you have demonstrated and embody that leadership through the service and public service and commitment to the rule of law that have brought us here today.
Well, thank you, Dean. And first, let me begin by thanking you and the law school for this wonderful honor. It's particularly given those who have preceded me in receiving this award, you know, the legal giants such as Mark Martin and Henry Fry, both Chief Justices of the North Carolina Supreme Court, Judge Bob Hunter, Janet Ward Black, and Charles Beckton, and many others. So it really is, I very much appreciate the fact that you all thought me worthy of receiving this honor.
It's our pleasure.
And it's even more gratifying to receive the award from you, who I consider to be a visionary academic leader. You mentioned the way Elon Law School has sort of redirected how lawyers are learn the craft of the law through practical experience. And I've had a couple of your students in residence at my chambers. I think that's a wonderful opportunity for law students to learn on the ground and learn the tools that they need to succeed. So thank you for taking the lead on that. You know, I think first and foremost, leadership is best emulated by example. We all have an obligation to put our best foot forward and make good and positive examples for other lawyers, law students, we have a wonderful profession, one that we're fortunate to be a part of, largely a self-regulated profession, one that, because it's self-regulated, requires leaders to be at the forefront to make sure that we do what is in the public interest at all times. And so if we keep that at the forefront of all that we do, and we keep improving a system of law toward making it better, as perfect as it can be, I think that's sort of the overarching goal that all of us have to be cognizant of and try to improve each and every day.
As an old-fashioned ethics lawyer, I appreciate what you say about being a self-regulating profession, and certainly there are no challenges today to the way in which we as lawyers conduct ourselves and the nation conducts itself, committed to the rule of law as it is, and with all of the challenges, pandemic, racial injustice, as we're sitting here, California and the West Coast is suffering the wrath of Mother Nature. These are all challenges that cry out for leadership, and we're hopeful that this award can embody those kinds of attributes that you demonstrate. I'm particularly, aside from everything that's in your bio, I know that you regularly go and talk to young people about the law, but also about public service. I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about that.
So, as I said earlier, it's really critical that all of us get back in whatever way we can, and what better way to do that than to try to inculcate at the very beginning of our of a young person's life the values that we hope will follow them throughout their personal and professional lives. So we have, sometimes through dint of hard work, but none of us got here on our own, exclusively on our own merit, right? We had people who were helping us at every step of the way. I know that was the case for me, both in the Marine Corps and outside of military service. And so it's an obligation that all of us have to do. So I have, over the years, mentored elementary school students, middle school students. I've spoken at high school graduations. In fact, although I spoke at Elon Law's graduation, I think the highest compliment and most enjoyable time that I had was speaking at an elementary school graduation. It was just a wonderful thing to see these young, bright minds. And they are our future. We are living in difficult, turbulent times, but it's not something that's foreign to this country. We oftentimes come up across challenges, but we always overcome them. And what's going to be necessary for us to overcome these most recent challenges are going to be the next generation of leaders who are going to help to make this nation live up to its creed, that all men are created equal, that that we're a part of this vibrant democracy in which each of us have a voice. But in order to do that, we need to teach our young people at a very early age that they have a responsibility to be a part of that vibrant democracy.
I hope, Judge, that some of those students find their way to law school, maybe even Elon Law, and we would welcome that. But for all of those things that you do, and for our admiration, and also we appreciate your recognition helping us with some students in residency.
Absolutely.
We really do want to award you our Leadership in the Law Award that we do with North Carolina Lawyers Weekly, and thank you very much for all that you do for the rule of law, for the people of North Carolina and the people of the United States of America.
I am very grateful to be in this really exalted group of lawyers and hope to continue to live up to that. So thank you very much, Dean.
I'd shake your hand, but I know we really shouldn't be doing that right now.
Some of the time.
Thanks, Judge.
Thank you very much.
You are part of a new generation of students. You serve, you lead, you connect. You learn best when you learn by doing. Elon Law is leading the change in legal education. At Elon Law, you are the center of an exciting and active way to prepare to be a lawyer. Full-time residencies with attorneys and judges, clinics that help real people, moot court and mock trial to hone your advocacy skills, externships at law firms, courts, and corporations. And we offer you more than just a law degree. Earn your MBA or a graduate degree in environmental policy, and experience a leadership program honored by the American Bar Association. Elon Law prepares you in less time and at better value than traditional programs. You graduate sooner with less debt, and you will be ready to succeed by using your Elon Law education to serve, to lead, to create a more just world.
Let's meet our first honoree, Jocelyn Jo Eason with Wells Fargo. She is Managing Counsel and Senior Vice President since 2014. Welcome, Jo.
Hi, thank you very much.
Jo, just a couple of questions for you so that we can get to know you and your perspective on leaders in the law. Lawyers have unique skills and qualifications. What do you see as being some of the most effective ways for lawyers to leverage those advantages in order to be leaders in their communities?
It's a great question. I think that lawyers, through their training and their experience, are innately great problem solvers and effective communicators. But I think what they can do and how they can bring those skill sets to bear as leaders in the community the best is by using those problem solving and communication skills to be able to see the big picture, understand all the different perspectives. So not just the point of view maybe that they're even representing, but all the different angles. And then understanding all of those details, identifying the problems, being that problem solver, and then effectively communicating to get results. In any leadership position, whether it be in the community or work, those are the types of things that I think are most effective that we need in leaders. So being able to see that big picture, identify the problems, solve them, and then effectively communicate to get results.
Excellent, excellent insights. I think a lot of attorneys would like to take on more leadership opportunities, but find themselves facing very intense demands on their time. How do you work to overcome that issue and find that time?
So I think I'm a work in progress on this particular issue. I recall I went to a conference a few years back, and I was so inspired by some of the people on the panels and the speakers. And I walked out thinking, I want to do more. I want to do more. But the reality is, as a career mom and wife with very active kids and other responsibilities, sometimes the reality is that you have to be able to prioritize and juggle, and that you may not be able to take on every single leadership opportunity, but you got to prioritize. And then I think the other part is you have to show yourself some grace, right? When the opportunity arises, you seize that and you act on it. It's like if you've seen Hamilton, right? I'm not going to throw away my shot. When your shot exposes itself, take the shot, right? And prioritize it. But then understand that you want to be the best at everything, but show yourself some grace, right? I can't be 110% mom and 110% attorney and leader all at the same time. So you prioritize, you do the best that you can. And most importantly, when you're trying to take on that opportunity or that shot, be humble, right? Always work to better yourself and be open to receiving feedback from others. If you're constantly working to refine yourself as a leader, even when you're juggling and prioritizing, I think you'll find you're always going to come out on top, and that you'll be a better leader because you're constantly refining yourself and holding yourself accountable.
That is excellent advice, not just for those in the legal community, but for all business communities and anyone. So thank you very much for that, and congratulations on being a leader in the law for North Carolina.
Thank you very much.
We now welcome G. Gray Wilson, partner with Nelson, Mullins, Riley, and Scarborough, where he's served for 3 years, and congratulate him on being chosen as one of our leaders in the law for 2020. Welcome, Gray.
Thank you.
Who were some of the attorneys who were the biggest influences on you in your career, and what did you learn from those lawyers?
Well, there have been a number of them, some in private practice and some on the bench. But I would say in private practice, the senior partner of the first firm that I joined, Hudson Petrie, was Gardner Hudson. And he was, almost 60 years my senior at the time I joined the firm. And I was in awe of him. He was what everybody calls a lawyer's lawyer, because he was not only an eminent attorney in town, a senior attorney in this city, but also had served in the state legislature, had served on various governmental committees. He probably was on the board of every charitable organization of note in the county. And so he was just a superb statesman and also the prototype of a Southern gentleman. And I was always eager to go to lunch with him or just to listen to him drop pearls of wisdom. The other was my former partner, Bill Moretti. Both of these fellows are now deceased, unfortunately. And if you ask me what I learned from him, from Bill Moretti, I learned how to think like a lawyer. He always viewed every case as a rock that you squeezed and squeezed hard enough until you finally found a crack in it. And he really was the best I ever knew with regard to analyzing a legal problem and finding a solution. So those two were instrumental, I think, in my mentorship.
They sound like very inspirational gentlemen to me. Many attorneys have employees who work for them, but in your mind, what are the most important attributes that enable a lawyer to be more than just a boss or an authority figure, but a leader?
Well, I mean, in the office, you know, we all have employees, and they're really not the damn tired help. Anyone who wants to survive as an attorney will understand that they're real people. They have families and hopes and dreams like everybody, and they have their own set of expertise, of skills. Certainly in the present day with technology, I'm utterly dependent on the administrative assistance I have for support with regard to computerized functions of all sorts, especially with the remote hearings and conferences that occur almost daily now while we sit here and languish in pandemia. So I would say, you know, as I learned in the military, you should always observe the 4 F's with staff and others, those that you would boss. Be firm, fair, and friendly, but never familiar. It served me well as an officer, and I hope I've carried that into the civilian practice I've had for several decades now. I think respect is the key to being a good boss or employer.
That's excellent advice, and thank you for that. I want to congratulate you again on being chosen as one of the 2020 leaders in the law.
Well, thank you again. I'm very honored.
Thank you. Our next honoree is Ashley Nicole Russell from A&R Law Offices. She has owned this law office for 10 years with 3 locations in Raleigh, Greenville, and Beaufort. Welcome and congratulations, Ashley.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so honored to be here.
We're honored to have you. What are some of the biggest challenges that you think are facing the legal profession today? And what thoughts do you have on how the profession might go about addressing those challenges?
So I think, you know, the legal profession, one of the biggest challenges I think that it has is distrust from the community in a large way. And I think that, you know, I think that the legal profession can be more transparent with the clients, with communication and with billing, fee structures. But I think that, you know, there are a lot of fear that has been involved in coming to an attorney's office and, you know, interacting with an attorney. I'm in family law specifically, and I think that because I do collaborative family law, I've found that a lot of people are looking for an alternative that is more like their personality, that could include settlement or out-of-court resolution processes. And so I think that that type of transparency of all types of processes, allowing clients to understand and choose processes, being understanding and transparent with billing and billing practices helps for the community to be able to relate to our profession. We have such a beautiful profession, and we were originally a profession of public service. And I think that that's incredibly important for the community to be able to trust our profession again in a lot of ways. And, you know, I think that it is an absolutely astounding profession. Obviously, I chose it, and I think it's beautiful what we can do as advocates. We have an amazing position in the community and all of our communities as advocates to be able to promote change and what's right. I think that, you know, just because something's the norm doesn't mean that it has to be. And we have the position to be able to do that and to help and create that sense of community. Again, we can be such big proponents of that within all of our respective communities across our beautiful state of North Carolina.
To piggyback on that, what can lawyers do to improve the quality of professionalism within the bar itself, especially among the newest generation of lawyers that are coming up?
Oh my goodness. That's one of my tent poles in my practice. I do have 3 different locations. So we have lots of different parts of the state. There are lots of different universities and law schools around those areas. And so we have a huge seed program at my office to where we really believe in, there's a lot of history in our profession, and it really started as a beautiful type of apprenticeship. And we pass down our knowledge because it is the practice of law. None of us really know what we're getting into when we start it. And when we're in it, it's so hard, but it's so rewarding, and it's so amazing, but it's so emotional. And I think that we really shell up a lot, and we don't provide that insight to the younger people, both in, college and in law school, and attorneys who are fresh out, to be more advocates and to be more, giving and kind of the information that we've learned over these years. Because in reality, that's the way that it works, is that we have to be able to pass it down, and we have to be able to learn from each other's mistakes, and we have to be able to learn from historical perspectives. We change the law, we as attorneys, over time when we see that things are wrong, or we can't always know what we're doing when we're walking into something and making decisions. But when we see a historical perspective, we can come back and say, okay, these are the things that we can do, and we can unite and do that. But we can't do that if we can't learn from each other's mistakes, because we're not sharing that information with each other. And I think that, doing that would help with the professionalism a lot. Family law really struggles with that in a big way. And so that definitely is right on my heart, for sure.
Well, that's fabulous. Excellent advice. I want to congratulate you once again for being part of the North Carolina Leadership in Law class of 2020. And thank you for your time today.
Thank you so much.
We now welcome Daniel Peterson with Parker, Poe, Adams, and Bernstein, where he has served in the Civil Litigation Department for the past 3 years. Welcome, Daniel.
Thank you so much for having me.
We're a pleasure to have you here. Lawyers have a unique set of skills and qualifications. What do you see as being some of the most effective ways lawyers can leverage those advantages in order to be leaders in their community?
Well, I think, lawyers have a unique ability to kind of see the entire chessboard, right? And I think another quality that you might not associate with lawyers too much, or at least I've not heard it kind of in the common lexicon, is I think we're a creative bunch too. So those two qualities combined allow us to really kind of take a step back, number one, and number two, apply some kind of dynamic and, again, creative solutions to challenging, multifaceted problems that we face in our communities and society in general. And I think possessing those kind of qualities really helps move that needle of discussion, and therefore helps to kind of build coalitions that other folks might not be able to build if without kind of the advocacy that we're used to making.
Gotcha. Very interesting perspective. Who were some of the attorneys that were the biggest influences on you in your career, and what did you learn from those lawyers?
So several come to mind. I mean, too many to list in this format. Certainly, I've been the beneficiary of so many wonderful people to just really take the time with me and allow me to grow in my practice throughout the years now. But 3 folks in particular spring to mind immediately. One of them being Mccarley, the former city attorney of Charlotte, and one of my colleagues actually here at Parker Poe now. He kind of recognized, he taught me rather that hard work really does pay off. He gave me the opportunity to start the city attorney's office kind of on a volunteer basis, and he rewarded my effort and hard work with a full-time staff position, and that work turned into my opportunity here. So he kind of taught me, or legitimized to me, what we kind of learned growing up, and sometimes it's a fable for a lot of people, but in my experience, I'm really grateful to Mac for making it a reality. My friend and colleague Lori Keaton, she has taught me that being a good person and being a nice person is not mutually exclusive with being a great attorney. I think sometimes the notion of zealous advocacy for one's client turns into this sort of I've got to not be a nice person to the other side or kind of lack some, it's an excuse for poor behavior is what I'm trying to say. And Lori's taught me, that you can be a kind and thoughtful person and be a great lawyer at the same time. And, finally, again, out of a list of so many people that I don't have time to name would be, again, my colleague, Jason Benton, who on a personal level, he's taught me, and confirmed to me that you shouldn't take yourself too seriously. But also on a professional level, kind of on the other side, it's a great idea to get things done so you can take a second or third look at that argument and really kind of look at both the merits and some of the weaknesses you might not have immediately perceived. But thank you for that question. I appreciate that.
We actually have had the opportunity to honor, I believe, both Mac and Lori with our various awards programs. And I know they are very worthy. And you now join them. And we want to thank you for your time today and congratulate you on being part of the class of 2020.
Thank you.
Now let's meet Anna Baird Choi, attorney with Nichols, Choi & Lee, Pllc, and a member of our class of 2020, North Carolina Leaders in the Law. Welcome, Anna.
Welcome.
What are some of the biggest challenges that you think are facing the legal profession today, and what thoughts do you have on how the profession might go about addressing those challenges?
Say from my personal experience, some of the biggest challenges are the same challenges that as lawyers we faced for decades, and it's just the newer attorneys helping the older attorneys or more seasoned attorneys learning and growing, and then sort of a vice versa. Those of us that have been practicing for a while like doing things the way we like doing them, and we really are in a time of change. Even beyond technology, with the pandemic, we've learned to our offices now. So many more offices are remote. Our meetings are remote. The way we interact is remote, and this is very commonplace for newer lawyers. And it's a challenge for those of us who've been in our careers for a while, who maybe haven't been in the corporate world where this was more commonplace. So I think it's a story for the ages, where those of us at one end need to listen and try to adapt to change, and perhaps those on the other end understanding we may go at it a little bit more slowly than they do. So it's just understanding each other and understanding there's certainly growth in doing things differently on both ends.
Bridging that communication gap, definitely.
Absolutely.
And we've certainly had to pivot in so many ways this year. I think a lot of attorneys would like to take more leadership opportunities, but find themselves facing very intense demands on their time, obviously. How do you work to overcome that issue and find that time?
That question just speaks so deeply to me. I think I decided relatively early on in my career that I did not want a workplace that was going to demand on a regular basis 12 and 14 hours of my day, because I wanted to set some time aside for family. I wanted to set time aside for community involvement, which I have. But I think the biggest challenge, the pressures that we find that keep us from taking on leadership is not just from the workplace. It's everything. It's what we are expected to do, especially those of us who have been in the profession for at least 15 or 20 years. We are expected to take leadership roles in local bars or bar association. We're expected to take leadership roles in community organizations or churches or houses of worship. And then we have these things at home called children. And some of us have our children at home right now, where they are, we're having to take on a leadership role in so many facets of our lives. And one of the things that I learned a number of years ago, I just sort of had an epiphany that, today's lawyer, and in my particular position, today's working woman, we can do it all. but we can't do it all at the same time. We can be a phenomenal lawyer. We can be a phenomenal leader in the community. We can be a phenomenal mom or phenomenal spouse. But trying to do every single one of those at the same time is going to result in burnout. So it's helpful to recognize that it's okay that for certain segments of your life to ebb and flow, while some are really rising high, others maybe need to take a little bit of a back seat and lean on friends and colleagues to support you and to understand where you are in your life, not just your career, but in your life.
Very, very well said. I want to thank you for joining us today and congratulate you again. You are truly a leader in the law.
Thank you. It's my pleasure, and I'm honored to be sitting here today.
We're now joined by Beth Langley, partner with Brooks Pierce since 2018 and a proud member of the class of 2020 North Carolina Leaders in the Law. Welcome, Beth.
Thank you.
We're glad to have you here today. I want a couple of questions to get to know you a bit. Lawyers have a unique set of skills and qualifications. What do you see as being some of the most effective ways for lawyers to leverage these advantages in order to be leaders in their community?
I think as lawyers, we are natural problem solvers. And yeah, we have opportunities to just creatively look to problems or challenges in our communities, and whether it's through serving on boards or different community organizations or really just becoming entrepreneurs. I think that we are uniquely just wired to be out there and on the front lines for making a difference.
Excellent. Great point. Many attorneys have employees, obviously, who work for them. But in your mind, what are the most important attributes that enable a lawyer to be more than just a boss or authority figure, but a true leader?
It's interesting when you said boss or authority figure, because I just can't imagine myself in those roles. The proverbial "there's no I in team." I think that's exactly what we do. We work as a team, as lawyers, on whether it's a case or a project, and everyone is crucial on a team. And that's really the key to success, everyone working together. And of course, you've got to have someone who's making the key decisions. But it's not a successful team if someone is just barking orders or making others feel that they're more important. So I think that's just what's crucial. I remember my dad years ago when I had to work for him, making it really clear that don't ever ask anyone to do something you wouldn't do yourself. And so it's I think that's the key to success.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Well, I want to thank you for joining us today. And again, congratulations on being part of the class of 2020.
Thank you so much.
We're now joined by Isaac Thorpe, attorney and founder of Thorpe Law, and one of our proud honorees this year. Welcome, Mr. Thorpe.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. And it's an honor to be accepted as a leader in the law.
Well, we are very happy to have you today, sir. What are some of the biggest challenges that you think are facing the legal profession today? And what thoughts do you have on how the profession might go about addressing those challenges?
I think that one of the big challenges is that it's so easy to get into the adversarial role that some of the traditions that my father taught me and I try to pass on to new lawyers is when you first get a case and you learn who the opposing attorney is, pick up the phone, call them, introduce yourself, let them know that you look forward to working with them, cooperate, fight about the merits, cooperate on the procedure. if they need an extension of time for discovery, have them reach out that you want to work with people. I think that really makes a big difference, because then you've got at least you have some sense of who you're dealing with, and you've sent a message that we need to cooperate. I think it's too easy to, you're so busy, who's got time? And I think it's especially true in this world where we're all texting or emailing. And it's even more of a problem when everybody's sort of isolated during this pandemic. But, you know, when I got a new case recently, and I reached out and said, let's do a 10-minute Zoom call. I've never met you. I look forward to working with you. And it's just a way to really help, because particularly I'm a plaintiff's lawyer. I don't get paid by the hour. And so if I can work something out with the opposing attorney, everybody benefits. So I think that's really sort of one of the big issues that we've got, too much polarization. And I think that's a good way to start a case. And then if you hit a spot where there's some conflict between the attorneys, if you need to cool off for a day or two, that's fine. Circle back around, reach out to the attorney, try to solve the problem that may be the source of the friction when you can. But it just really, I think that it makes practicing law more fun, which practicing law is hard, but it can be fun when when it's working right. And so I think that reaching out, and never forget to value the importance of relationships with opposing counsel. You'll have more fun, and your clients will benefit.
Very good. Very important to establish those lines of communication early. Next question, what can lawyers do to improve the quality of professionalism within the bar, especially among the newest generation of lawyers?
Yeah, I think that there are some programs where younger lawyers get paired with older lawyers. I think that sort of mentorship is so important. I was fortunate that I worked with my father, who had been a lawyer for, 30, 40 years by the time he and I started working together. My grandfather, it was just a tradition. And I think that there's something about an older lawyer sort of sharing, because you're going to fall on your face, particularly if you're a trial lawyer. I don't know, at least the first 100 times kind of hurts kind of bad. But when you have a chance to talk with other attorneys and older attorneys, it's like, well, of course you do. That's what happens. That's why they call it the practice of law. So I think that sort of mentorship is really important. I think that, for example, the Wake County Bar, they have an awards show that helps raise money for legal aid. You get to see lawyers in a humorous, theatrical setting, those sorts of things that we so badly missed during this pandemic. I think those can be great ways. We see each other as lawyers, but we're three-dimensional human beings who have families and interests and joys and fears and all of that. So the more we can sort of relate and just have informal time when we're going to the picnic, I just think that is a way to really help strengthen relationships. And when you strengthen relationships, it's always comes back to our clients' benefit.
I couldn't agree more. Thank you so much for your insights today, and thank you for being part of our presentation. And once again, congratulations.
Well, it's my honor, and thank you so much.
I'm now with Manisha Patel, attorney and owner of the law offices of Manisha P. Patel, Pllc, who joins us as an honoree in 2020. Thank you very much for being here, Manisha. We congratulate you on your award today. Who were some of the attorneys who were the biggest influence on you in your career, and what did you learn from those lawyers?
Okay, that's a great question. Thank you for asking. I would have three different individuals, two of which are lawyers. One I worked with very heavily in one of my jobs, I would say, starting out as a young lawyer. But the first, I would have to say, definitely Janet Ward Black. I worked at her firm for about almost 6 years, a little less than 6 years. And during that time, she really took me under her wing and was a great mentor, and really just taught me how to be an effective leader, an effective lawyer, and most importantly, I personally have found is how to be the consummate professional. I learned all of those traits from Janet Ward, and those are values I hold dearly to my as I move forward in my career. But it's a relationship that we still continue. We see each other walking on the greenways on the weekends and at professional events, of course. But I would say she has been one of the most influential attorney mentors I've had. Second, I would say Afi Johnson-Paris. I worked with her for a total of a little over 8.5 years, from my time in law school to when I opened my own law office, and at the end of 2018. Afi really showed me how to be a great family law attorney. I learned a lot of substantive procedural areas of family law with her, as well as how to be an effective litigator. Because all of family law, let me take a step back, vast majority of family law is litigation. And so she really taught me those skills of how to be an effective family law attorney throughout these years of learning how to be a lawyer and learning how to be a good lawyer, and then going beyond and how to be a good family law lawyer. And so I would definitely say Afi has been one of the most influential in my field of practice. And the third individual, she's not a lawyer, but she works with them and she manages them. Rhonda Holloway was the firm director at the firm Ward Black Law, where I worked prior to opening my own law office. And I really learned how to be a businesswoman from her. A lot of people don't realize when you have your own practice or a small law firm, there are different balls you're handling, things in the air you have to keep running. And the business side of a law practice is a whole nother beast compared to the lawyering side of a law practice. And I truly learned so much from all three of these outstanding women leaders and mentors in this field. But Rhonda really gave me a true outlook and mentoring of how to be a successful businesswoman, on top of the relationships I have with both Janet Ward and Afi.
Fantastic. They all sound like very, very influential women, great mentors. I think a lot of attorneys would like to take on more leadership opportunities, but find themselves facing very intense demands on their time, obviously. How do you feel that you've overcome that issue and found the time to contribute?
That is a great question. I get that question a lot because I am heavily involved in different bar organizations locally and statewide, as well as within my community. And it's just, honestly, it's my biggest passion. So I make time for it. Aside from being a lawyer, being a family law lawyer, focusing on my clients, their needs, and their best legal interests, one of my other passions is serving others. And this is something that has been instilled in me at a very young age, reinforced through my years at Virginia Tech and then at Elon Law subsequently. And that passion is rooted in serving in different organizations, lending a helping hand, whether it's on a committee or simply by participating in a Zoom meeting, a phone meeting, in-person meetings when we used to do those, is, wherever I can lend my voice, my skills, that's what I'm passionate about. And with that, it comes these leadership roles. And with that, I've learned to balance that passion with my passion of being a family law attorney. And if we're looking at specifics, I literally block out time in my calendar for this block of time is going to be to prepare for our North Carolina Association of Women Attorneys annual meeting of membership. This block of time will be for our Greensboro Bar Association pro bono project. I block out these times literally on my calendar, color coordinated. So not only am I keeping everything straight, but my assistant has it straight, and there's no way of hopefully crossing my fingers that it doesn't happen in the future, but missing anything.
Okay, great. That's fabulous advice for all of us. And I want to congratulate you again on being part of the class of 2020. Glad to hear you are an Elon graduate as well, as they are our title sponsor. Have a wonderful day, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much. I'm just so honored with this naming of the leaders in the law, and thank you for letting me chat with you today.
Welcome now by Noah Huffstetler of Nelson, Mullins, Riley, and Scarborough, partner with that firm. Congratulations, Noah, on being part of the class of 2020 North Carolina Leaders in the Law.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Lawyers have a unique set of skills and qualifications. What do you see as being some of the most effective ways for lawyers to leverage those advantages in order to be leaders in their communities?
Andrea, I think that both transactional lawyers and litigators like myself understand the value of compromise and seeking essentially middle of the road kind of solutions to problems. As lawyers, we are trained and in our experience know that it's important to understand your opponent's evidence, her point of view, her essential arguments. And I think that works the same way for transactional lawyers as well. So I think that that gives lawyers the ability to understand that there are two sides to every case. There are two parties or more to every transaction. And often the best thing that can come out of the resolution of the case or the consummation of the deal is something that benefits both parties. So I think lawyers should be able to help their communities come together and seek the kinds of solutions that are broadly beneficial, understanding that you can't always have everything that you want, but as a great legal philosopher, Mick Jagger, once said, sometimes you get what you need.
Very true. What would you say lawyers could do to improve the quality of professionalism within the bar itself, especially among the newest generation of lawyers?
I think the most essential thing to do is to model that professionalism. I don't think you can be very persuasive in asking young lawyers to act in a certain way if he or she does not see you following the rules, treating people with respect, being the kind of lawyer that you aspire to be. So I think modeling is more important than any other aspect of mentoring professionalism.
Excellent. And many attorneys obviously have employees who work for them. How do you distinguish yourself from not just a boss or authority figure, but more as a mentor and leader with your staff and crew?
Sure. I think the most important quality in doing that is some degree of self-awareness. I think you can't take yourself too seriously all the time. You need to understand that the successes that you achieve and the recognition that comes your way is most always a product of a team effort. And so you need to share the accolades or the respect that goes along with those successes and understand always that you're part of a team. It's a we kind of profession, not an I kind of profession. And let's face it, any recognition that we get as lawyers, including the nice one that you've given me today, is a product not so much of your individual efforts as it is the people who have supported you and worked with you along the way.
Excellent. Thank you very much for your time today, and congratulations again on being chosen as a leader in the law.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
We're now joined by Lee Poole with Crampville, Sumner, and Hartsog, where he is a partner. And we congratulate you, Lee, on being part of the class of 2020 North Carolina Leaders in the Law.
Thank you.
Who were some of the attorneys who were your biggest influences on you in your career, and what did you learn from those lawyers?
I think the first two I think about in response to that question would be Bob Sumner and Dan Hartsog, who were founders of the firm. And what I learned from both Bob and Dan was an ability to be an advocate for your clients, but at the same time practice civility within the bar. You didn't have to be and don't have to be adversarial in every interaction with members of the bar. And I think you would find that those lawyers are very well respected by their adversaries as well as their clients. And so that's something that they preach to us as young lawyers within the firm. We've taken that to heart, and in fact, professionalism is one of the core values of our firm, and we sort of carried that on, and that's something that was always emphasized to us. Richard Boyette, who's also a member of the firm, as a young lawyer used to scare us all to death, but because of an attention to detail. That was the thing for Richard. You never wanted to give him something back that was not absolutely perfect, or he'd call you on it. We were working for Richard, and he was the number one client. So attention to detail with Richard. And finally, I'd say my father, simply because he was a lawyer, and that probably steered me toward the practice of law as a student. So those four, I would say.
They all sound like excellent mentors, and I can certainly speak for the members of your firm that you mentioned, that they've been very influential in the state of North Carolina. What are some of the biggest challenges that you think you're facing, the legal profession is facing today? And what thoughts do you have on how the profession might go about addressing those challenges?
I think some of the biggest challenges that we face as a profession today, or one of the biggest challenges, is the practice of law as a business, and trying to maintain an emphasis on professionalism and giving to the community at the same time that you're practicing law as a business. And I think a way that we can continue to improve our contribution to the community is everything from the mandate from the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court to the bar, to the law firms, that we emphasize giving back to the community through pro bono activities. And for different lawyers, that's going to appear different ways in terms of how you give back to the community. It may not necessarily be pro bono work. It might be involvement in your church or some other organization. But I think we need to continue to try and impress upon younger lawyers especially, and in fact, those of us that are older lawyers, to pursue that mandate, that is to give back to the community. And that's tough, because with the practice of law as a business, it gets harder and harder to carve out time for family, mental health, and giving back to the community at the same time.
Very wise words. I want to thank you very much for your time today and congratulations on being part of the class of 2020.
I really appreciate it, and thank you for this recognition.
We're joined by Samuel Johnson with Pointer Sprul. He is a partner with the firm. And Samuel, we congratulate you on being part of the 2020 North Carolina Leaders in the Law.
Thank you very much. I'm honored to be recognized.
We're honored to have you here with us today. Many attorneys have employees who work for them, obviously, but in your mind, what is the most important attribute that enables a lawyer to be more than just a boss or an authority figure to their employees, but a true leader?
I'm not sure I know what the most important attribute would be, but I think that employees appreciate the loyalty of the boss to them, as well as the expectation from the boss that they be loyal to the boss. I think that an employer should be consistent in dealing with employees, but at the same time have some flexibility. And I would say that employees would expect their bosses, or certainly would respect their bosses, if they are honest and have integrity in what they do. And in our case, and for law firms, I think that employees appreciate the boss's dedication to practice and to some standard of excellence and quality. I think everybody needs a sense of humor in everything they do. And so I would think employees, in my experience, employees appreciate a sense of humor in the boss and a recognition that, hey, we're in this together, and we'll get through it a lot better if we inject an appropriate amount of humor and a lack of arrogance and some humility in your dealing with employees. So I can't say which one of those is most important, but I think those are attributes that I would expect in an employer, and a sensitivity and compassion where that's called for, and a sensitivity to the employee's circumstances. So sorry for the rambling answer, but that's kind of the way that's the way I would like to be viewed.
No, that is great insight. Thank you very much for that. I think a lot of attorneys would like to take more of a leadership opportunities out in the community, but find themselves facing very intense demands on their time. How do you personally work to overcome that issue and find the time for that community outreach?
Well, I think that lawyers and others in similar professions, but I think we lawyers had, certainly in my experience, one issue that I always encountered was that I was not the master of my own schedule, and that I always felt that I was on call for clients. I mean, I still do, for that matter. And clients expect, especially today, even more so than, years ago when I started practicing. I think clients expect instant, responses, and that means availability, and which makes it difficult for scheduling. And I think that I can imagine, especially younger lawyers, feeling somewhat guilty, and are they, sort of abandoning their practice by taking on a civic commitment. But I do think that civic commitment by lawyers is important, and I think that lawyers should try to find something that's important to them and something in which they can make a difference and get involved with it. And when that happens, somehow or other, you just make room for it. You've got family, you've got work, you've got your clients. But I think lawyers have a lot to offer to the communities where they live. And I think that they'll get a more enrichment out of life if they give something back. But, all that being said, it is a struggle to schedule it. And I think you just have to make a commitment, a reasonable commitment to say, yeah, I'm going to do this, and I'm just not going to be available at that period of time, but, I'm available later. And you just have to make room for it.
Absolutely. Again, great advice, and I want to congratulate you again on being chosen as a leader in the law. And thank you for joining us today.
Well, thank you very much. All right. Nice to see you.
Nice seeing you. We now welcome Ed West, who is a partner with Brooks Pierce. Ed, congratulations on being chosen as one of our North Carolina leaders in the law for 2020, and welcome today.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I'm honored to be a part of a group of great lawyers. Thanks.
It's great to have you here. What can lawyers do to improve the quality of professionalism within the bar, especially among the newest generation of lawyers?
Well, I think there are a couple things. I think the biggest thing is obviously trying to model the behavior that we want the profession to have and setting an example. And then I think the other piece, and I think is something that we all have to remind ourselves of, including myself, is that we have to actually take the time. And there are sometimes when we are involved in cases or negotiations or all the myriad things that lawyers become involved with, and we're moving quickly and we're moving on to the next thing. And sometimes I think it's important for us to take a step back and realize that there may be lawyers who were younger in the profession, who maybe haven't been at it as long, and maybe try to explain, hey, this is why I'm doing this, or this is something we might want to think about, or this is the reason I'm doing it this way. There were people who did that for me coming along that I learned from, and that modeled those kinds of behaviors. And I think remembering that they took the time, I need to make sure I take the time.
Very good. Many attorneys have employees who work for them, but in your mind, what are the most important attributes that enable a lawyer to be more than just a boss or authority figure, but a true leader to their employees?
I think a lot of the things that are important to being a great leader are there whether you're a lawyer or not, when you're working with others, and particularly with fellow employees. Obviously, again, you want to set the example. You want to make sure that they see you living out the values that you say you care about. And so if they see you out in the community, working to make your community better, serving on boards, serving, in organizations, advocating for causes, when they see that and that you actually, walk the walk, hopefully that is something that inspires others, whether they're employees or not. And I think another piece of that is having their buy-in and their help so that when you are working on things, they feel a sense of it as well. And so they feel like they are a part of what you're working on. And when people feel ownership and buy-in and that they are a part of something bigger than just coming in and punching the clock, I think it has an impact.
Absolutely does. And that's great advice. Thank you very much for sharing with us today. Congratulations again on your award.
Well, again, thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
Have a great afternoon.
You too.
We're now welcomed by Lash Zimp with Robertson Stevens Attorney at Law in Asheville, North Carolina. Welcome, Lash.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's a really a privilege and a surprise to be here.
Well, we're glad you're able to join us this afternoon. What are some of the challenges that you feel are facing the legal profession today, and what thoughts do you have about how the profession might go about addressing those challenges?
Well, I mean, obviously COVID and the current present circumstances, but a challenge that has been present and persistent through my 30 years of practicing law has been and continues to be a significant challenge is the amazing lack of diversity. I find it still to be astounding that our profession, which we spend a lot of time creating strategical plans and thinking about diversity, but we do, I think, a very poor job of actually implementing it. And one of the things that I have learned from my involvement in other facets of the community, working with different organizations, is that in order to really accomplish the goal of having a more diverse organization, you have to be tremendously intentional about that. And it is not something that will just by placing your advertisements or recruiting in specific locations will suffice. You have to seek out candidates, particularly of color, we've at Robertson Stevens, I know that we spend a lot of time talking about how we go about doing that. We reach out to law schools directly and other resources to try to identify candidates that we, particularly persons of color, who we feel would be a good fit for our firm.
That's excellent. I think a lot of attorneys would like to take on more of a leadership role and opportunities in their community, but find themselves facing very intense demands on their time. How do you work to overcome that issue and find that time?
It's undoubtedly a challenge. There's no question, particularly when you're earlier on in your career and you have all the pressures of trying to fulfill billable hour obligations. You have the pressures of trying to develop your own practice areas. You have the pressures of trying to develop your own clients. And that's just in the professional realm. You also have those challenges at home with your family and trying to grow your family and keep everyone healthy and so forth and so on. What I have found is that if you truly are interested and truly would like to become involved in the community, it's just a matter of creating that intention for yourself. We all have narratives that we run through our heads that, for better or worse, can create obstacles to doing the things that we really want to do. And what I found over time is that if you have the time, if you budget your time and you manage your time well, that you can find the time to become involved. And you may not jump in with both feet into an organization right out of the gate, but you'll train yourself by becoming involved and learning how to manage your time to become more and more involved. And then it sort of just naturally falls into place after that. So I think having the intention and overcoming whatever narratives you have going on in your head that create these obstacles is probably the first step.
That's excellent advice for anyone in any profession. So thank you for that. And congratulations, Lash, on being one of the 2020 Leaders in the Law, North Carolina.
Well, thank you very much.
What qualities do you need in the people you hire? Experience relevant to your practice area? Strong research and writing skills? Confidence to appear in court on day one? At Elon Law, we deliver all of the above. All of our students receive unmatched practical training when they complete full-time legal residencies during their second year. With our innovative approach, Elon Law students graduate in December. Hire on your own schedule. Don't wait for May. Elon Law's Office of Career and Student Development can help at no cost to you. On-campus interviews, resume collections, job postings. We're here to help meet your hiring needs. Contact us today and learn how Elon Law is preparing a new generation of lawyers who lead.
Well, folks, we're a little over halfway through our presentation, and I'm going to turn it over to our Editor-in-Chief, David Donovan, to finish out our honoree interviews. Stay tuned.
Our next honoree is Angie Zimmern at Mcguire Woods. Angie is going to be joining us from her car today, but she assures me that she is not driving, so I don't want anybody to worry about the moving car in the background. Angie, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here, and I'm honored to be a part of this program.
Well, we're honored to have you. So you are the pro bono director at Mcguire Woods, and I wanted to talk to you tell me a little bit about the work you do there.
Sure. Well, I'm the first pro bono director at Mcguire Woods. A lot of large law firms have full-time pro bono directors who help run the administration, coordination, recruitment, and creation of pro bono partnerships at law firms. So I have a great group of esteemed colleagues across really the world, but certainly across the United States, who all help administer pro bono at their various law firms. And this is a position that I undertook in April of 2019. And basically, I spend my time trying to elevate our pro bono program and liaison with our legal service providers in all 20 of our offices to identify their needs and figure out how Mcguire Woods can contribute to those pro bono needs.
You know, we've written a lot about the importance of pro bono work, and one of the things that I find interesting, you know, attorneys, a lot of them really want to give back, volunteer with their time, but, you know, sometimes the sense is, well, you know, I do legal stuff all day at work. You know, when I volunteer for the community, I want to do something that maybe uses a different kind of skill. But, you know, obviously lawyers have special credentials and special skills that nobody else has, certain rights that nobody else has. So, you know, when getting attorneys, you know, to do these pro bono projects, how do you sort of get across that sense of, you know, spending the volunteering time, you know, using those same skills that they use in the office?
That's a great question. You know, I've personally struggled with this because I was a practicing attorney for 15 years before I rolled into the pro bono position. And yeah, we do legal work all day. Sometimes at the end of the day, you just want a break from it. And doing pro bono may not be the most appealing way to spend your civic and community time. And what I say to our attorneys is really there's so much variety in the type of pro bono work that you can do that it really can be something novel and exciting and interesting and something that doesn't feel like your everyday practice. And a lot of the passions that our attorneys have for issues in the community can really easily be translated into pro bono legal work that's unlike what they're doing in their everyday jobs. Not only in the subject matter, but also in the way that that legal work is performed. For example, we have a lot of clinics where we can do one-day pro bono engagements to help people and give back in a really meaningful way. That's different than just sitting at your desk working on legal documents, so to speak. And that is something that is really appealing to a lot of our attorneys. Another thing that we do that I think really generates an increase in participation is we partner together, not only internally at the firm, but with a lot of our clients to do pro bono work. And that is something that our clients and our attorneys internally really gravitate towards. Just that opportunity to work with someone on a pro bono matter makes it a unique experience and something that you may not necessarily get in another setting. So that's really been a selling point, if you will, for increasing our participation in pro bono.
Well, that's awesome. Well, Angie, thank you so much for taking time to speak with us today, and congratulations on being a Lawyers Weekly Leader in the Law.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. And thank you for highlighting pro bono in this way. I think it's a great opportunity to raise awareness, and I certainly appreciate the visibility.
You're welcome. It's our pleasure to do it. Our next honoree is Kate Hardy at Mcguire Woods. Kate, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
So, Kate, tell us a little bit about the work you do on behalf of survivors of domestic violence.
Sure. I am on the board of directors for an organization called DV LEAP. It's Domestic Violence Legal Empowerment and Appeals Project. It was initially run out of George Washington University Law School. And the project was started to help women or other victims of domestic violence who get what we call wrong outcomes in their court cases, where maybe children are forced to go back with someone who's abusing them, to try to overturn those cases on appeal and set better precedent in case law for future victims who are in the court system.
That's awesome. And then in addition to that, I know that you are really active in the development of cannabis law, which is a really emerging industry right now, something we've written about substantially in our paper. Tell us about both the work you do with that and also what's going on in that really interesting emerging area of the law there.
There is a lot going on in this area, including, as you may have seen during the recent election, a lot of states are really coming online, not only with approving medical cannabis, but also approving recreational cannabis, which is definitely a new thing. It's a money generator for the states. So that's going to be an interesting area for states to maybe collect extra money. I started working with this. A lot of my practice, I work with big banks and lenders, and I do a lot of compliance counseling in the life sciences space. And the cannabis was really just a natural outgrowth of both of those practices as the market continues to develop very quickly and there are all these products on the market. Folks just naturally, had questions on how can I invest in this or how can I put my product on the market. So it was really just a natural outgrowth of a lot of the work that I've been doing.
Yeah, my understanding there is that it's a little bit of a dicey area for some investors, and particularly the big banks you were talking about, because of the regulatory uncertainty and the legal uncertainty over cannabis, that it makes it challenging for investors and banks, and I guess that creates an opportunity for you there to provide some really good counsel.
Yes, cannabis is still illegal at the federal level. There's been quite a few bills in Congress to try to, there's one called the Safe Banking Act, which would actually give banks more latitude to bank and have accounts for companies that are in this space. But right now there's a big dichotomy at the federal and the state level. We'll have to see how that continues to develop, especially if there's a change in administration. I think a lot of folks are hopeful that there'll be some more positive changes going forward.
And one last question. So obviously, lawyers have a lot of really unique skills. What do you think are the most effective ways for lawyers to leverage those skills in order to make an impact and a difference in their own communities?
I think as a lawyer, you have to be very organized. You also have to be able to focus on very small facts, but you can't lose sight of the big picture. And I think those skills are also very helpful in trying to do work in your community. And the organizational skills can certainly help a lot, but when you're trying to think about things, having the ability to focus on important facts, but also try to keep in mind the big picture and the direction that the community wants to go is very helpful.
Well, Kate, it's been really great talking to you. We really appreciate you making time to speak with us today. And congratulations on being one of our Lawyers Weekly's Leader in the Laws.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Our next honoree is Nick Ellis of Pointer Sprul. Nick, thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, glad to be here.
So Nick, I know you serve on a number of boards, YMCA, Boys and Girls Club. Tell me a little bit about how your background as a civil litigator helps you in helping those organizations.
Well, one, I've always thought doing civil litigation that there were two things and they're both equally important. I need to know what my case is about and my client's case is about, but I need to also understand what the other side's case is about. And in the time that I've been fortunate enough to work with the Boys and Girls Clubs and the YMCAs, you're always talking about issues. Are we going to have this program or that program? Are we going to do this renovation or this new construction? And so while I may have a personal viewpoint on what direction we should go, and I need to know how I can validate my viewpoint, I think it's just as important to know what the other viewpoints are and to really understand those viewpoints and how they may overlap or not with what I'm thinking. But once you get into those discussions about decisions that need to be made, I think doing litigation helps you articulate that in hopefully a persuasive way so that you can try to build some consensus. In court, you're trying to build consensus with 12 jurors. And I don't think it's really any different in boards for nonprofits and things like that in your community.
So how do you go about building that consensus and trying to lead people to reach an outcome that's going to be beneficial for the whole group?
Yeah, I think what you always try to do is to recognize the legitimacy, and there usually is legitimacy on both sides. And so I think what I've always tried to do is to not so much attack and downplay the other side of the coin, but to recognize the legitimacy of that position or perspective, compare and contrast with the position that I'm trying to articulate and advance, and try to do that in a real non-confrontational way, but try to point out the common sense, I think, support that the viewpoint I'm trying to advance has, and then try to get people to come together and say, look, this might not be the perfect resolution, but it's a resolution that everybody can agree on.
You know, one thing I'm always really interested to ask attorneys is, who were the attorneys that were the biggest influences on you in your career, and what did you learn from those other lawyers?
Well, and this one was a lawyer, he was a judge. Like a lot of people, my first job, I clerked for a federal bankruptcy judge here in North Carolina. And Thomas Moore, Mickey Moore was his name. And what he did and showed me were a couple things. One, whenever we had to go to court, and I was his law clerk, he was prepared maybe more than the lawyers were. But he really knew the case, knew the issues, knew the law. And he didn't hesitate to make those decisions. But what he also did, gosh, he was probably doing mediations before there were mediations. He would routinely conduct hearings, let everybody have their say, and then he would say, well, let me talk to you lawyers back in chambers. And then he would somewhat give an indication maybe where he was going, but he would try to do what we've been talking about. He would try to find the commonality between the two sides, try to build some consensus, which would hopefully lead to a settlement that that the parties could live with and manufacture, rather than have a court decision, which is sometimes an all or nothing for the parties. But I think what he showed me was, one, you got to be prepared, and two, even in the cases that you feel really strongly about, there's always an opportunity to see if there's some way to resolve the dispute yourself with the other side, rather than always having to go to court and have a judicial decision.
That's great. Yeah, I always find it to be a really interesting question. You know, it's so important, the people who are influences on us in our career, and the difference they really make. And hopefully we as attorneys can have that same kind of influence on the future generation.
Well, and another point that, gosh, he really impressed upon me, and I did not come from a family of lawyers. I mean, my father worked in the shipyard, Newport News, and mother was a school teacher, and I was the first one in the legal profession. But he really went out of his way, whether you were the most prominent lawyer from the most prominent law firm or a sole practitioner from a small town. He treated everybody the same. And I have always tried to replicate what Judge Moore did with that. And again, everybody is here. Everybody is generally trying to do their best. And if you try to keep everybody on the same level and interact with them in the same way, I think it's better for the judicial process. I think it's better for you individually. It's better for your client. And I just think, again, everybody's better served if you kind of say, we're all trying to do our best here, trying to get to some common goal, and again, value everybody's input as you're trying to get to that end point.
Well, that's a great way to treat people. Well, Nick, I really appreciate taking time to speak with us today, and congratulations on being one of Lawyers Weekly's 2020 Leaders in the Law.
Thanks so much, and have a great rest of your day.
You too. Our next honoree is Colleen Byers of Bell Davis and Pitt. Colleen, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me.
So, Colleen, lawyers have unique skills and qualifications that nobody else has. What do you see as being some of the most effective ways for lawyers to leverage those advantages in order to be leaders in their communities?
It's a great question. So really, when you think about it, lawyers solve problems, right? I mean, that's what we do. And we know that humans and communities and organizations have lots of problems that they need help solving. And the other thing about lawyers is we love to ask questions. We're skilled at asking the right question in the right way. We have this insatiable curiosity. And I think that that's what helps us leverage our leadership skills in communities, because we can really peel back the layers of the onion and dig deep into why something is or is not working and how it could be improved. I think we sometimes drive people crazy, non-lawyers crazy, with the amount and extent of our questioning. But really, I think when our brilliant analytical minds intersect with our courageous hearts and our honed ability to persuade other people, then I think lawyers are in that unique position of being able to not only envision a new and better future, but enroll others in that vision too.
So tell me a little bit about the lawyers who were the biggest influences on you in your career and what you learned from those other attorneys.
Yeah, so there's this one moment that sticks out in my mind among all the rest of them. And that was, I was in a knockdown, drag out, will caveat dispute, family members shooting daggers at each other across the table. And I was also pregnant with my first child. And so the stress level of all of that combined was pretty high. And opposing counsel told me that he would not, pursue the case while I was on maternity leave. He basically agreed to a voluntary stay for a 3-month period while I was on maternity leave. And to me, that was just the epitome of professionalism in the field. It didn't, harm his client in any way, but he didn't have to do that, right? He could have, actively pursued depositions and discovery during that period. And it would have cost my client more money to get one of my partners up to speed on the case. But he didn't do that. And I think that just shows that you can zealously advocate for your client while still being a kind, reasonable human being to the other humans involved in the case. And that story has stuck with me. And I try to, give the same professional courtesies to other people that I come across.
It's a great story, and it's a great way for us to treat one another. Colleen, I really appreciate you taking time out of your day to speak with us today, and congratulations on being one of Lawyers Weekly's Leaders in the Law this year.
Thank you very much.
Our next leader in the law is Maureen Murray. Maureen, thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure.
I think a lot of attorneys would like to take on more leadership responsibilities, but find themselves facing obviously very intense demands on their time. How do you overcome that issue and find that time to engage in leadership opportunities?
I think I learned that best from having 4 children and having to learn how to delegate. Have a great team in terms of my husband, and we had a nanny for a number of years. And I think that's a lot of what's involved, is both having a great team and deciding what's important. One of my early mentors was Jerry Whitfield. That's another one of your questions. But she was one of the lawyers in our firm as a woman who was one of the first, early women in our firm. And she once did an exercise with us where she put rocks into a jar and then put small pebbles and then put water. And she basically said, take the things that are most important, put them in your life first. You will get those done. And then there's room to fill around what will still work. And I found that worked very well. I also found that you have to let go of certain things that don't matter as much. So for example, it mattered to me to make my child's birthday cake. It didn't matter to me as much to clean my house. And you have to figure out what you're going to do yourself and what you can delegate to others. And I think that's how you make time. You decide which efforts you want to undertake, and you pick a couple of them. You don't overdo it.
What do you think are some of the biggest challenges that you think are facing the legal profession today? And what thoughts do you have on how the profession might go about addressing some of them to improve the quality of practice?
There are a couple of those. One I would say is technology. Technology is a great advantage, but we tend now to think if we can press a button to ask a question, then somebody can immediately press the button to give the answer. And we're used to getting a lot of instant gratification. All of us are. And you have to resist that, I think, as a lawyer. Sometimes you can give a real quick answer, but other times it really takes further thought. And you need to just try to do that. The second, I would say, are some perceptions to me have changed over time. And there's less perception that the legal system is fair. I think the more we can do to try to assure people and for people to really appreciate that the system is fair, it will make a difference. And that's across all fields. And many organizations, professional organizations, are working hard on that, both to right some injustices in the past, but also to be sure to educate people on the checks and balances in the system to make it fair. And then I think the third is just the influx of information that all of us now deal with, and whatever your job is. And information is different than answers. We all have to somehow sift through that, and lawyers are trained very well to do this as to what's important and what we should focus on rather than just masses of information. So those are three examples.
That last one, sort of like the rocks and the pebbles and the water in the jar.
In some ways it is, I guess, or a funnel, right? We pour a lot in and then we have to pull out what's important.
Well, Maureen, thank you so much for taking time to speak with us. It was great talking with you, and congratulations on being one of Lawyers Weekly's leaders in the law for 2020.
Well, thank you so much. It's a pleasure talking with you. I hope you have a great weekend.
You too. Our next Leader in the Law honoree is Stephen Feldman of Robbins & Bradshaw. Stephen, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for honoring me. I'm grateful to be here.
So tell us a little bit about the work that you've been doing restoring voting rights for people who are getting back into society after leaving the prison system.
Sure. So what you're referring to is a case that's currently pending in the North Carolina state courts that challenges as unconstitutional North Carolina's statutes for restoring voting rights for felons who have been convicted. And my and Robinson Bradshaw's involvement in that was filing a brief on behalf of former prosecutors across the country who essentially argue through empirical evidence that not restoring voting rights to former felons makes them feel less involved in society. And as a result, that ends up making them more likely to commit crimes. All of us are less safe. And so we filed a friend of the court brief saying, if you're thinking that restricting voting rights for felons is a way to sort of punish them or to make us all safer, it's the opposite. It's making us less safe. So that was our involvement in that. And voting rights is an area I feel especially it is an area of special interest to me. I find it hard to believe that anyone who's a citizen of the United States should not be able to cast a ballot, no matter what their situation in life is.
You know, I think a lot of attorneys would like to take on more leadership opportunities or pro bono work or projects like you've been involved in, but find themselves, just facing all the very intense demands on their time that lawyers face. How do you work to overcome that issue and find the time to get involved and stay involved in these projects?
Sure. So probably a multi-part answer to that. First is, it depends on how you define leadership opportunities. In my view, we all have leadership opportunities every day, all day. Leadership to me is, doing a great job on some work, something that improves the lives of the greater good or improves the lives of others. You don't have to be in a pro bono case or part of any extracurricular organization to do that. So I think all of us can be leaders and are leaders in what we do every day. Second, I guess I challenge the narrative that we're all busy. We all have a lot of things going on. In my experience, and believe me, I was terrible at this until recently. We are imposing this narrative on ourselves. We're under this view that unless we take advantage of every opportunity, or unless we satisfy everyone who wants some of our time, we're not doing things right. But if you release all of that, and instead you get sort of intentional about what you really want and what matters to you, then you open up a lot of time. And so to me, that's how I do it. I prioritize. I'm very intentional about selecting what am I really curious about? What are the things that matter to me? And it's a process. You have to revisit that list. But once you critically narrow that list and then figure out what's in the way and release it, then you find yourself with enough time to do the things that matter to you. And so that sort of systematic evaluation, releasing narratives, and just ignoring the voice in your head, frankly, that tells you I need to be doing everything, I need to please everyone. You can really free yourself to do great things that way.
You said you were terrible at that until recently, so I'm kind of curious what changed.
Yeah, I mean, I would say probably when about 10 years ago or so, when my kids were quite little, and I was involved in lots of different organizations, and I was making everyone unhappy. I couldn't fulfill my obligations to the organizations. Probably my client work wasn't as great as it could be, and my family probably wasn't loving me. And eventually I just started saying no. And then I ended up working with a business coach / life coach with whom I still work today. And she has been instrumental in helping me feel comfortable with saying no and realizing that saying no to opportunities is actually as beneficial for the person doing the asking as it is to you. Because if you can't do an awesome job, you're not really helping them. You're not fulfilling their mission. So sort of creating that permission structure for myself has been key, and that's been the game changer.
Well, that's great advice. Stephen, I really appreciate you taking time to speak with us today. Thank you, and congratulations on being one of Lawyers Weekly's 2020 Leaders in the Law.
Very good. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. Our pleasure. Our next honoree is Avery Simmons from Bradley. Avery, thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you for having me today.
So I know that you do a lot of work at your firm mentoring younger attorneys, and I was curious to ask you what you think that lawyers can do to improve the quality of professionalism within the bar, especially among this newer generation of attorneys.
That's a great question. And I think one of the things that's so important to teach younger lawyers is to show grace. I think teaching young lawyers how to be gracious in every aspect of how they practice law is so incredibly important. For instance, if opposing counsel asks for an extension, or if opposing counsel brings something to you that, maybe, would have been a gotcha moment otherwise, but would allow you to exercise some form of grace, I think that's incredibly important to teach our younger bar members. It's not about just, ramming into court and winning on emotion, at no cost. It's important to remember that this is a bar and that we are all members of this bar, and that the goal is to get to the substantive truth of the matter, whatever it is. And so in my mind, it's incredibly important that we teach our younger lawyers that. We had an instance recently at Bradley where opposing counsel had typed his wrong email address into a filing. And so he never got evidence of our filing. And the younger lawyer came to me, she's a young lawyer, and she was panicked. And she said, what do? If we don't do anything, we win. And I said, we do, but do we win the right way? And do we win on the substance? And she was like, well, no. And I was like, well, let's do the right thing. And so, I said, the important thing is that when you do this, you're able to look at yourself in the mirror and be happy with the person you see looking back at you. So to me, that's something that's really incredibly important that we teach our younger lawyers.
Who were some of the attorneys that were most influential on you in your career, and what did you learn from those other lawyers?
This is a tough question, and I have to say I've known a lot of amazing lawyers. I've known a lot of amazing lawyers in Charlotte and throughout the United States, and they've all taught me a lot. And so when I was sitting here trying to think of who would I pick to highlight in a story, it got really difficult. You know, my goal is that with every lawyer I interact with, I take something away from them, whether it be good or bad. But in terms of people that have had the most influence on my legal career, it may sound somewhat trite, but my dad is someone that has had the most influence on my legal career. And he isn't a lawyer. My father was a crane salesman and then became a CEO of a corporation. And what he taught me that I think is so important is he taught me how to read and manage people. And I actually think that that's a skill that a lot of lawyers don't learn. And I think that skill has helped me in my legal career more than almost any other.
Well, Evie, it was great talking to you. I really appreciate you taking the time. And I want to thank you, and I want to congratulate you on being one of Lawyers Weekly's 2020 Leaders in the Law.
Well, thank you so much.
Our next honoree is Marshall Wall of Cranfield, Sumner, and Hartzog. Marshall, thanks for joining us today.
Absolutely. Glad to be here.
So you are the managing partner at Cranfield Sumner, and so you have a lot of people that report to you and you are responsible for. But I'm curious to get your thoughts about what the difference is between being somebody that either just gives orders or tells people what to do and truly being a leader, you know, who moves people towards a common goal.
Well, I think part of it, David, is making sure that people understand the goal and understand the reason for it. It's easy to tell somebody, hey, go do this and just get it done. But I think that we all do better when we've got an understanding of the objective and we can say, okay, here's the reason that we need to take this step. We need to send this. We need to contact that person, because it fits into the overall for the work that we're doing. So what I hope is that we get that teamwork together by making sure that people understand the objectives and we all try to row the oars in the same direction.
What do you think that we as lawyers can do to improve the quality of professionalism within the bar, especially among the newest generation of attorneys?
There's always this perception, especially in litigation, which our firm does a lot of, that you've got to be advocating for your client. And in order to do that, you may have to be difficult and try not to get along with people. And that just isn't the case. I think you do your clients a better service when you have good relationships with opposing counsel. You're understanding when people need an extension or they need to move something or they need some more time. And I hope that we here try to train our younger lawyers, newer lawyers to do that, to be understanding and forgiving and know that sometimes you're going to be the one who's got to make that call. And so when you ask somebody for a favor, if you've given them one in the past, we hope that they'll remember that. And it just makes for a better experience. Litigation is stressful enough for the parties and the lawyers that if you can have those good relationships among the members of the bar and understand that we're all here as professionals and we're all trying to do our job the best that we can, it's going to end up with a better result for everybody, clients included.
Well, Marshall, I really appreciate you taking time out of your day to speak with us today, and I want to congratulate you on being one of Lawyers Weekly's 2020 Leaders in the Law.
Thanks so much, David.
You have a great day.
You too.
Our next honoree is Hampton Dellinger from Boyce, Schiller, Flexner. Hampton, thanks for joining us.
You bet. Thanks for having me, and I really appreciate the recognition.
Well, we're delighted to have you. I'd like to ask you, what do you think are some of the biggest challenges facing the legal profession right now, and what are your thoughts on what we can do to maybe address some of those challenges?
We are, I think, by nature, when we're at our best as lawyers, a collegial profession. And so we have lost that ability to be together in so many ways. There's obviously the economic hardships that are affecting so many, including many who do not have ready access to legal representation. There's the necessity of keeping our colleagues safe, keeping the judiciary safe, being able to return to jury trials, being able to have speedy access, certainly to criminal proceedings, but also to civil justice. So the challenges facing the legal profession, just like those facing the wider society right now, are as great as I've ever seen.
You mentioned both, collegiality among attorneys and also this access to justice gap that I know you and I have talked about in the past. And I find that those two issues are very closely intertwined. A lot of the back and forth and legal sparring that attorneys sometimes get in the mode of doing can also be very expensive for clients. And I was curious your thoughts on what attorneys can do to try to both make lives easier for themselves while also maybe saving some money for their clients.
I think it has to start with each attorney's own individual behavior. We've got to each model the civility that we want to see in our justice system, and we've got to be role models for the next generation of attorneys. So in the way that I learned so much from leaders in the North Carolina bar and national attorney figures, I'm now in the middle of that process of aging through the legal profession, and I'm still learning, but I'm also trying to be a role model for the generations of great lawyers to come.
Lawyers have such unique skills and qualifications. What do you see as being the most effective ways that lawyers can leverage their unique talents in order to bring positive change in their communities?
I think it's being an advocate. So we are accustomed to being an advocate for our clients, and that is our duty, and we have to be zealous advocates. But I think being an advocate or a champion for small business, I care a lot about independent bookstores. I'm always trying to spread the word about great independent bookstores across North Carolina, being an advocate for small businesses generally. I think that's the type of role that an attorney can play, using the same skills you do for your clients, paying or pro bono, but in the service of your fellow members of the community, both locally and throughout the state. And I want to say as well, I think the other key challenge that has come to the fore, I think lawyers have always known about the challenges of social justice and the endemic systemic racism that we see throughout society, and that I think hurts particularly when we see it in our criminal justice system, when we see it with law enforcement. I think lawyers have known about this and have been working on it, and now it's part of a broader conversation, but lawyers need to continue to lead on social justice measures, and you can do that for your clients or you can do it within your community.
Well, Hampton, always great talking to you. I really appreciate the chance to speak with you, and I want to congratulate you on being one of our 2020 Lawyers Weekly Leader in the Law.
It is an honor, and I'll just say very briefly how meaningful North Carolina Lawyers Weekly has been to me and to my practice. I first started reading it as a summer associate at Tharrington Smith 30 years ago, and I wish Lawyers Weekly a great another 30 years.
Well, thank you. I really, really appreciate that. I hope we have that as well. Our next honoree is Ken Burgess from Pointer Sprul. Ken, it's good to talk to you today.
You too. Thank you.
Ken, I was looking through your profile, and you are involved in just so many boards and committees, and I think a lot of attorneys would like to do more of that, take on more of those leadership opportunities, but there are such intense demands on our time. It's tough to carve out that time. What do you do, or how do you work to overcome that and find the time to be involved in all these different projects that you're involved in?
Well, it's a little bit like exercise. You just have to make time for it. But I tell you what I've learned in 34 years of practicing law. We typically don't engage in charitable work or board work or other volunteer work to help our law practice. But every time I've done it, it does end up helping my law practice. So I encourage my colleagues to think about charitable works, bar work, and community work as really an augmentation and a support of your practice. It's always helped me build mine in ways I could never have anticipated.
Like how so? Can you give us any examples of how some of your services help with your practice?
Sure. I've been involved for many, many years in North Carolina in what we call end-of-life healthcare planning and advanced directives. I've chaired a bar committee for probably 2 decades now. And several years ago, a large hospital system was looking for a new counsel. And a woman I'd met through this work had never done any legal work for her, called me and said, "You're about to get a call from our general counsel, stand by." And the call came, and to make a long story short, the general counsel said, "We're looking for a new attorney. You fit the bill, and my colleague speaks highly of you from all your work at the bar with end-of-life planning. Would you like to be our attorney?" And of course, I said, "Let me think about it. Yes." So a great example of something totally unintended. That client is now one of my largest clients and has been for years.
Oh, that's great. Who were some of the attorneys who were the biggest influences on you in your career, and what did you learn from those other lawyers?
Yeah, the first one is a man that many will know named Phil Carlton. He is a former Supreme Court Justice, former Secretary of Crime Control and Public Safety, and was my first mentor. And he told me two things I've never forgotten that have served me well. The first one is always treat your law colleagues as you would your best partner. Because, often it's easy for us to sort of run over the people around us in the fast pace of a legal practice. That was a good tip. He also told me to remember this, and I have: every choice we make has a price, including not making a choice. And he would always say, measure carefully and make sure it's worth the price, because at some point, sooner or later, you will pay it.
That's good advice. Well, Ken, I appreciate you taking time to speak with us. It was great talking with you, and I want to congratulate you on being one of our Lawyers Weekly's 2020 Leaders in the Law.
Thank you very much.
Our next honoree is Alonzo Alston from Mcalpine. Alonzo, nice to talk to you today.
Nice to speak with you.
So now, Alonzo, you practice in entertainment law, and I know that's got a bit of a reputation for being kind of a cutthroat industry, but I know you've kind of found a slightly different approach to your practice, as I understand it.
Yeah, I think the best way to think about it is the business is kind of what you make it despite what's going on around you. What I built a practice on was integrity, having a strong knowledge base, lots of years of experience, and a willingness to best prepare not only my clients, but myself to be successful in the different pursuits that they have in the entertainment industries. So I chose to be here in North Carolina based on my experience. A lot of people don't know that North Carolina is a hotbed for music and creating exposure for new artists and for existing artists because of our deep college community. We have so many colleges and universities that it's a key market to actually introduce new music into the populace of the entire country, because people export what they like to their hometowns. But if you introduce it to them in college, there's the collegiality of the experience creates a buzz. And that the Carolinas, North Carolina, South Carolina are hotbeds for developing, new artists. And I knew that because of my experience in radio and marketing in the entertainment space. So it made a lot of sense for me to just be patient and wait for the tide to come in, knowing what I knew about how artists are promoted and marketed.
You talked about your years of experience. In that time, who were some of the attorneys who were the biggest influences on you in your career, and what did you learn from those other attorneys?
I still call and speak to Bernie Resnick, Max Resnick, Bob Celestin, Phil Elam. From afar, I observed Dina LaPolte. A lot of respect for Yawanda Carter. There are a lot of actual people who have seeded either knowledge or wisdom or encouragement into me as a young attorney. The Middletons, it's a husband and wife team. They both have prominent positions in the music industry. The thing that I learned was that you have to be patient. In particular, Max Resnick actually, spoke in depth about it, but this essence of it was, if you're going to be in an off market, don't expect it all to happen at one time. Be okay with being diligent. So I've got one of these behind me, but in my practice, I've worked on, I think 4 platinum albums, 2 platinum singles. They're both multi-platinum. And no, those 3 platinum singles, and then 2 are multi-platinum. My clients have Emmys. My clients have received all the awards YouTube can give you. They are excellent entrepreneurs in their entertainment spaces. They have, the Silver Ambles, and PR. It's just, I've been really fortunate to build a reputation on being not necessarily the nice guy, but the person who has integrity. I tend to, it's timing, you can't always meet every single schedule, but you set a deadline and you meet it, or you set a goal and you achieve it, and you set reasonable expectations and you meet those expectations. That's been my calling card, and helping clients achieve their goals through our representation. So it's just that's the bread and butter.
Well, Alonzo, it's great to talk with you about all this, and I want to congratulate you on being one of Lawyers Weekly's Leaders in the Law for 2020.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Have a great day.
You too. Our Lawyer of the Year this year is Colleen Byers of Bell Davis and Pitt in Winston-Salem. Colleen has been a leader in promoting health and wellness for lawyers. Through her Yoga for Lawyers classes and wellness presentations across the state, Colleen has been working to help attorneys be better at what they do and lead happier lives. Colleen also serves on the board of directors of the North Carolina Bar Association's Bar Cares, a program focused on improving mental health and quality of life for lawyers across the state. Colleen's practice is now focused on serving as a mediator and a litigation attorney with a collaborative approach. Colleen helped advocate for the Uniform Collaborative Law Act that was passed into law in North Carolina this year, and is the secretary of the board of directors for the North Carolina Civil Collaborative Law Association. So we are delighted to honor Colleen Byers as the North Carolina Lawyers Weekly 2020 Lawyer of the Year. Colleen, congratulations.
Thank you so much, Johnny. I am honored and humbled to be among so many great lawyers that you all have nominated this year.
No, it's our pleasure. Let's talk a little bit about the work that you do, and particularly health and wellness. I know that is something that you're really passionate about. Tell me about your work in that and why that's such an important thing to you.
Yeah, absolutely. I found yoga pretty much when I first started practicing law, and it really helped me manage the stress and anxiety of learning how to practice law and litigating, and the challenges that come with that. And so once I found a practice that really helped keep me grounded and give me some headspace and some good physical exercise, I dug in deeper and wanted to learn more about yoga and yoga philosophy and the mind-body connection. And so I became a registered yoga teacher several years ago, so that I could share the benefits that I found in yoga with other people. And I thought that lawyers were in high need of some stress relief. And so I've enjoyed offering the benefits of yoga that I have found with my colleagues.
What's some of the most important advice that you would have to give to attorneys that are trying to improve their own work-life balance and deal with the stress and rigors of being an attorney?
Yeah, I think it's extra challenging during the current time that we find ourselves in, right? If you're like me and you would like a little bit of space, a little bit of headspace, but you have family or colleagues all up on top of you because maybe you're working from home, or maybe you have more work than you know what to do with because of all the issues that clients are facing. It can be really challenging to carve out some space. And so I think some tips that I have would be to schedule time. A lot of us are type A, we like to stick with our calendar. And so I find that scheduling time on my calendar for exercise or journaling or a gratitude journal can be really helpful to keep that spot reserved on my calendar. I also find accountability is helpful. So I like to have a class that I've paid for already, or that I have a friend or a colleague who I'm going to disappoint if I don't meet them there virtually for that class. And then also teaching yoga helps me really make sure that I get on my mat and I really make sure to show up for the people in my class. And so I like the accountability and the structure of a calendar and a buddy.
So let's talk a little bit about collaborative law. So first, let's start just for maybe anybody who's not entirely familiar with the process. Tell our audience a little bit about what collaborative law is and how it's different from other forms of conflict resolution.
Yeah, so collaborative law is a form of alternative dispute resolution. It's on the ADR spectrum, and it is entirely outside of the traditional court system. But it's different from mediation in that collaborative law requires collaborative lawyers. So it's not a neutral that's involved. It's trained collaborative lawyers for each party. So each party needs a collaborative lawyer, and you choose the process because you want to exchange information voluntarily, and you want to work on your problem together in a joint problem-solving model. So you sit down at the table together, everybody, lawyers and clients, and you work together to identify business interests, needs, and then brainstorm possible solutions that might work for everybody. So instead of the traditional positional-based bargaining that we use in the traditional model, this is an interest-based negotiation model that we use in collaborative. And instead of a finite pie that you're dividing up, which by definition, somebody gets a bigger slice and somebody gets a lesser slice, we're expanding the pie. We're not limited by the pie tin. We're looking for creative, innovative solutions that can maximize the return for everybody involved.
So tell us about, now you were a big advocate for the law that was signed into law this year. Tell us a little bit about what that does and how that changes things for collaborative law practice in North Carolina.
Yeah, so a big shout out to the board of wonderful volunteers with the North Carolina Civil Collaborative Law Association, led by John Surratt. They laid the foundation for this act many years ago and have worked tirelessly in Raleigh to get it through. And the act, I think, legitimizes this process in North Carolina. It gives lawyers some certainty and some guidance on these are the rules that we're playing in. This is the field. These are the rules that everybody's agreeing to. And then the other benefit is that it tolls the statute of limitations on any claims that the parties might have while they are choosing to pursue this alternative dispute resolution option. So they don't lose any of their rights that they otherwise might have. If for some reason the negotiations break down and you're not able to reach a resolution, you still have the traditional option to go to court.
Are there any attributes or principles of the collaborative approach that you think might be particularly helpful for attorneys who are still involved in that traditional litigation-based approach, things that they can use even in the traditional paradigm?
Absolutely. So I was just talking with some of the board members about the fact that the collaborative process, the training, and the negotiation model that we use can help mediators improve their mediation skills, and it can help lawyers who are negotiating in a traditional model as well. Because instead of just shuttling numbers back and forth or just getting entrenched in, I want the house, this model helps us really peel back the layers of the onion and get deeper into what is the underlying interest, what is driving the demand for a particular dollar amount or a particular thing. I do a lot of trust, estate, and fiduciary litigation. And so in those cases, there are a lot of emotions involved. And my clients often want things that are not monetary, right? They want to understand why somebody disinherited them. They want an apology from somebody else. They want recognition that when they took care of mom on her deathbed, that was really hard and that benefited the family because mom didn't have to go into a nursing home. There are so many things that our clients want beyond just a money judgment or what a judge might be able to award them in court that really matter to them. And so being able to ask the questions that get to really the heart of the matter, I think is important to be able to help our clients articulate what it is that they would like and to allow them to be able to possibly come to a resolution.
Yeah, it was amazing to me in my own practice how, for many clients, one of the biggest things was they just wanted to be heard, wanted somebody to hear and listen to where they were coming from.
Yeah, and sometimes in the traditional model, they don't feel like they actually get that until they get to trial. And as we all know, so few of our cases ever go to trial. And so what would it look like if our clients had an opportunity to be heard on day one at the first joint session when we all sit down at the table together?
You know, we talked earlier about how lawyers are problem solvers, help clients solve whatever problem is going on in their life, and it might be one of the biggest problems they've ever faced in their life, or certainly the biggest problem they're facing at the moment. And in this conversation, you know, we've talked about your work with health and mental wellness for attorneys, and also this problem-solving aspect for clients. And, you know, the more I write about these two topics, the more I find that, you know, they're really the same thing. There's so much of these two issues that overlap and intertwine.
I couldn't agree more. I'm glad you saw that synergy. And I think that, you know, lawyer effectiveness is directly related to lawyer well-being. We cannot pour from an empty cup. And it's a lot. It's a big responsibility to hold space for our clients' problems, right? Because with that, it's not just a legal problem. Our client comes to us with all sorts of heavy emotional things that for some period of time, we take on the burden for them to help them through that process. And so there are vicarious impacts of that, right? I mean, we as lawyers experience compassion fatigue and vicarious trauma, and we have to be attuned to that. And the more that we can help take care of ourselves, the better we will be able to serve our clients. I think also the more grounded and calm that we can stay amidst the chaos that often swirls around us with client disputes, the better off we are. And I think the better off our clients are. We can hear them, but then also we can help keep them grounded to hear us when we share our perspective, and also to help hear the other side, right? I think that part of our role as a collaborative lawyer and as a mediator in particular is to help the parties hear each other.
Yeah, you know, so we've talked about, you know, attorneys helping themselves and helping their clients. Earlier when we talked about a great story from your practice, you know, an attorney that, you know, did a very professional thing in a case that you were working on. What can attorneys do, not just to help themselves and to help their clients, but to help each other, you know, deal with the stresses of this profession?
Yeah, I think, you know, I have two little kids and they love Frozen and Frozen 2.
Mine too.
And one of the best lines from the movie Frozen 2 is just do the next right thing, right? And I think that the more grounded and well we each are, then the easier it is when we get challenged or triggered or stressed to remember our core values and to align our actions with those core values and just do the next right thing, right? So I think it's leading by example. I think it is showing courtesy and professionalism to the other side, even before they've shown it to you, and maybe even in spite of not receiving it back. Right. I think that is really hard, but I've seen it shift the dynamic. You know, there's that old adage that kill them with kindness, right? I mean, you know, if you just continue to be unflappably professional, eventually the other side has no choice but to see how ridiculous their lack of professionalism is.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. I have a 3-year-old daughter, and that song basically just plays on a constant loop in the car. So next time I hear that song, which will not take long, I will definitely think about how it applies to lawyering. So I really appreciate that analogy. Well, Colleen, it's been such a great conversation. I've really enjoyed speaking with you about all of these topics, and I really appreciate you taking time out of your day to speak with us. And I want to congratulate you again on being our Lawyer of the Year.
Thank you so much.
So that concludes our 2020 Leaders in the Law event. It's a great time that we had doing it, and I want to thank you all for joining us for this event. Real quick before I go, I want to add a couple more things. First off, we want to give a big thank you to all of our subscribers at Lawyers Weekly for allowing us to do the work that we do. It's our pleasure and our honor to serve the legal community of North Carolina and provide you with the news you need in order to practice law better, more efficiently, and more profitably. So thank you so much, and we hope that you will continue reading Lawyers Weekly. Finally, just want to give you a reminder that we will have a Leaders in Law event next year in 2021, and we want you all to pay it forward by thinking about who you'd like to nominate and who you'd like to see as our Leaders in the Law next year. So be looking for opportunities to nominate. And we'll see you next year. Thanks so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure. We hope you all have a great rest of your day.